"Cut the cameras! Cut the cameras!" The voice cracked through the studio like a shot. It wasn't bluster now. It was panic. Trump's face, usually bronzed into a theatrical mask, had turned pale beneath the studio lights. He stood up halfway, jabbing a finger toward the control booth behind the audience glass. Murmurs swept the room. Producers glanced at each other, unsure whether to obey. The moderator blinked in stunned silence, caught between protocol and chaos. Across from him, Jasmine Crockett didn't flinch. She remained seated, shoulders back, gaze locked. The tension in the room could have shattered glass. She slowly placed her notes on the table, folded her hands, and then spoke again, this time louder for the viewers at home. "Then let's talk about the DNA test you thought would never go public." Gasps, audible. One man in the back visibly dropped his phone. A camera woman's eyes darted to the director, who mouthed, "Keep rolling." Trump tried to speak, but no words came out. Just a gurgled half-sound like an engine failing to start. He adjusted his tie, adjusted it again, then pointed back at Crockett. You don't even know what you're talking about." But Crockett was already miles ahead. Calm, composed, and very, very certain. "I know more than you think. I know about the filing in Palm Beach. I know about the sealed envelope. I know why you've kept it buried for over a decade." The crowd stirred again, more urgently now. The moderator shuffled his cue cards as if trying to change the subject, but it was far too late for that. Jasmine leaned forward. "And I know the test didn't go the way you wanted." Trump blinked rapidly. His jaw clenched. "I said cut the damn cameras." Still, the red light on the main lens stayed lit, glowing like a target. This wasn't a leak. It wasn't a gaffe. It was a confrontation choreographed with the precision of a courtroom closing argument, and Crockett had just delivered the opening blow. But what she said next wasn't just political. It was personal. It started like any other town hall. Polished lights, pre-screened questions, and a stage 2. Small for two people with egos this large. 24 hours before the explosion, the room buzzed with anticipation. The format was supposed to be civil, moderated, structured. But with Donald Trump and Jasmine Crockett on the same stage, everyone in the room sensed the fuse was already lit. From the opening minutes, Trump dominated the floor with classic bravado, interrupting, pivoting, steamrolling. He ridiculed climate policy with a smirk, brushed off indictments with shrugs, laughed when asked about January 6th. And Jasmine Crockett? She didn't flinch. She waited. Let him burn oxygen. Let him build the mountain she planned to knock down. They clashed over student loans, border policy, gun reform. Each exchange hotter than the last. Then came the health care question. A soft pitch, really. The moderator asked about medical transparency, patient rights, and data privacy. That's when it shifted. Crockett's eyes narrowed. She picked up a new folder, one she hadn't touched until now. "If we're talking transparency," she began, "shouldn't that start at the top?" Trump scoffed. "You mean with me? Lady, you're not even in the same weight class." Laughter rippled from a corner of the audience. Brief, nervous. Crockett didn't blink. "You demanded President Obama's birth certificate," she said, evenly. "You made an entire movement out of questioning a black man's origins. So I think it's fair to ask, what are you hiding?" Trump leaned back, arms crossed, grinning. "What the hell are you even talking about?" That's when she said the phrase. 7 words that detonated the room. "The DNA test you thought was sealed." The words sliced through the atmosphere like a courtroom objection that couldn't be overruled. A pause. Long. Charged. Even the cameramen weren't breathing. Trump's grin faltered. What had started as a debate about policies had suddenly turned into something else. Something primal. Something dangerous. Because Crockett wasn't just pointing at hypocrisy. She was pulling a thread from the past, a sealed document, a rumored paternity claim, a legal filing that had disappeared from public view just before a key business deal. In 2012, in one move, she redefined the moment. No longer about policy, now about truth. She wasn't attacking a politician. She was confronting a legacy built on image, on branding, on secrecy, and she was doing it live. As Trump scrambled to respond, a producer backstage mouthed "Jesus Christ" to no one in particular. The clip, just 47 seconds of unfolding tension, would, within hours, break into every algorithm, because no one watching knew the next 47 seconds would become the most replayed moment in political livestream history. And Jasmine Crockett was just getting started. For years, Donald Trump has played the part so well, many forgot it was just that. A part, the businessman, the billionaire, the strong man with a golden tie and an iron will, the man who, somehow, always landed on his feet, no matter how close the edge. That was the myth. The invincible American alpha. Unchecked, untouched, untouchable. He built it brick by brick, from boardrooms to backrooms, from casino floors to cable news studios. Trump was always the man with the answer, louder, faster, deflecting, denying. If something threatened the illusion, he sued it. If someone questioned him, he mocked them. If documents surfaced, he sealed them. And the world watched as the walls around his past thickened. But behind that armor of confidence lived a different truth, one far less grand. Because for all his chest-thumping patriotism, Trump spent years weaponizing doubt. He launched his political identity by questioning President Obama's. He didn't need evidence, he needed cameras. And once he had them, he seeded doubt, like a true showman. Why hasn't he released the long-form birth certificate? Why? Doesn't anyone remember him from college? Questions, always questions, asked with a grin, dripping with implication. But when the lens turned around, Trump turned silent. He refused to release his own college transcripts. His tax returns became a legal chess game. His business dealings buried in shell companies. And most curiously, his personal history, particularly the years between 1989 and 2012, became a fog of NDAs, quiet settlements, and sealed court filings. There were whispers. Always whispers. A tabloid headline buried in a 1999 issue. Trump, accused of paternity dodge. A Palm Beach clerk anonymously quoted in 2005. That file disappeared. A woman silenced by a payout. Her lawyers suddenly unreachable. And then there was the test. A court-ordered DNA test that reportedly linked Trump to a child born in the early 2000s. No charges followed. The case vanished. But internet sleuths never let it go. They pointed to sudden real estate gifts, unexplained fund transfers, the child's name quietly appearing on a foundation beneficiary list, and then vanishing again. Still, Trump said nothing. He continued to mock the heritage of others. Elizabeth Warren as Pocahontas, Kamala Harris with dog whistle conspiracies about her parents, Mexican judges painted as biased because of their bloodline. He turned questions of identity into applause lines, but never once did he answer his own. That was the contradiction Jasmine Crockett saw so clearly. Here was a man who built his platform by demanding others prove who they were, while spending decades dodging questions about his own lineage, finances, and past relationships. He branded himself as the ultimate straight shooter. But behind the gold-plated curtain was a maze of redacted paperwork and erased timelines. Social media amplified the myth. Clips of Trump calling himself a genius, declaring, "No one knows the system better than me," and telling audiences, "I have nothing to hide," played on loop. But in contrast, watchdog accounts kept posting court docket numbers, digging for PDF scans, trying to match signatures. And for every document they found missing, the legend grew stronger. Because when someone appears invincible, even silence feels like strategy. Until someone breaks it. Jasmine Crockett didn't walk onto that stage to debate tax rates. She came to tear off a mask. And unlike the others who had tried with anger, outrage, or chaos, she came armed with facts, records, and composure. She knew the story, knew the pattern, knew exactly which thread to pull and when. Because what Trump feared most wasn't the volume of opposition. It was precision. The kind Crockett had spent her entire legal career mastering. And when she said the words DNA test on live television, it wasn't a guess. It wasn't an attack. It was the end of a very carefully constructed illusion, because Jasmine Crockett had done her homework, and she came armed with proof Trump never wanted seen. Before she ever stepped onto a debate stage, Jasmine Crockett was a girl in Roseland, South Dallas, who knew what it felt like to be unheard. She grew up in the kind of neighborhood that politicians only remembered during election season, where sidewalks cracked and promises faded, where the lights flickered in classrooms and eviction notices appeared like clockwork. Her mother worked long shifts, sometimes 2 at a time. Her father, a quiet presence, taught her to read legal letters out loud when the bills stacked too high. From the start, Jasmine understood power, not because she had it, but because she could see who did. She earned her way into college with grades no one expected, and then fought her way into law school where she was often the only black woman in the room. Professors doubted her. Peers underestimated her. But she didn't flinch. Because she wasn't there to impress them. She was there to defend people like the ones she'd grown up with. And she did. As a public defender, she walked into courtrooms where no one cared about names, only case numbers. She sat beside teenage boys who couldn't afford bail, and mothers facing eviction over technicalities. She gave up weekends and skipped paychecks, because the fight was always bigger than the fee. Her office was often just a desk with flickering lights and overstuffed folders, but it was where justice happened, where the overlooked finally had someone to speak for them. And she didn't just defend. She listened. She remembered the woman in tears whose landlord had forged her lease, the undocumented father arrested without cause, the transgender teen, beaten in holding while the guards laughed. Crockett didn't just see injustice. She lived inside its architecture, so when her community asked her to run for office, she didn't hesitate. Not because she wanted the title, because she needed the microphone, and when she got it, she didn't whisper. In Congress, she earned a reputation fast, not for politeness, but for precision. She called out lies in real time, refused to play the game, said no to corporate PACs, stared down lobbyists and tweeted receipts. Her floor speeches weren't carefully polished. They were carved from fire. She told the truth because too many people couldn't afford the cost of silence. But behind the courage was something even more personal. Because Jasmine Crockett knew what it felt like to have her own identity questioned. She remembered the first time someone asked if she had papers. She remembered the sting of a teacher doubting her name was real. The cold glance of a bank officer asking for just a little more verification. She remembered being stopped in airports, interrogated in hotel lobbies, treated like a guest. In her own country. She remembered the silence that followed those moments, how no one stood up, so when she saw Donald Trump build a political empire by weaponizing identity, by questioning where people came from, who their parents were, whether they belonged, she didn't just see a lie. She saw a man abusing the very system she had spent her life fighting against. This wasn't about party lines. It wasn't about debate points. It was about dignity. It was about a man who had demanded other people's documents while hiding his own, and it was about the millions of people who had been silenced, mocked, and told to go back where they came from, while Trump's secrets remained protected by wealth, connections, and fear. Jasmine Crockett didn't come to the stage to win applause. She came to hold him accountable in a way no one had before. Not with noise, with facts, with records, with a calm he didn't know how to counter, because this wasn't strategy. It was personal. And when she looked into the camera, held up that folder and said she had documents that would change the DNA of this debate, she wasn't bluffing. Back in the studio, the crowd had no idea they were about to witness a political tectonic shift. Jasmine Crockett waited. The room hummed with the low frequency of expectation. Lights buzzed, cameras whirred. Donald Trump was mid-answer, veering off script as usual. Something about vaccine mandates and states' rights, tying it all back to winning big and fake news. The moderator blinked, tried to steer him back, but Crockett interrupted gently. "Since we're talking transparency," she said, voice even, deliberate, "maybe it's time you shared the results of that test." The word test landed like a dropped microphone in a silent auditorium. Trump paused. "What test?" he said too quickly, and the temperature shifted. Not in the room, on the stage. You could feel it in the stillness, the way Trump leaned back for a second, as if physically distancing himself from what was coming. "I'm just saying," Crockett continued, eyes never leaving him, "if public figures are expected to disclose their health records, their finances, their birth certificates, shouldn't that include results from court-ordered DNA tests too?" Trump forced a laugh. "Lady, you sound like a tabloid. You watching? Too much daytime TV?" A few chuckles from the crowd. Nervous, hollow. Jasmine didn't smile. "I'm watching the courts. I'm watching sealed motions. I'm watching cases disappear right after settlements are signed." Trump waved a hand. "Oh, please. Next thing you'll say is, I've got a secret kid in Canada." He was spinning now, deflecting. "But I didn't say that," she said. "You did." The room held its breath. The moderator glanced at the production team. A stagehand stepped forward, then stepped back again. Crockett leaned forward, elbows on the desk like a lawyer about to deliver closing arguments. "You spent years questioning other people's backgrounds. You made a brand out of demanding proof from others. But when it's your turn to disclose," Trump cut in, "you're pathetic, you know that? No one takes you seriously. You're just trying to go viral." She didn't blink. "If that were true," she replied, "you wouldn't be sweating." A cameraman zoomed in. Trump's upper lip gleamed. He shifted in his seat, glanced at the moderator. "We done here? Or do I get a rebuttal to this garbage?" The moderator stammered. Congresswoman Crockett, are you alleging—" She turned calmly. "I'm not alleging anything. I'm asking why a man who demanded birth certificates from others refuses to explain why he sealed his own court-ordered paternity test." And that's when she did it. She reached beneath the desk, pulled out a thick manila folder, and placed it flat on the table. The label in bold marker, "Confidential, unsealed by order." Trump's expression shifted instantly. The jaw clenched, the skin drained, the mask slipped, the entire room felt it. No shouting, no name-calling, just the sound of papers quietly hitting a surface, and the sound of certainty cutting through decades of deflection. Crockett looked him in the eye. "You wanted transparency?" she said, her voice almost a whisper now. "Let's begin." And in that moment, before a single document was read, before a single word was proven true or false, something happened that no audience had ever seen. Trump didn't speak. Not for one breath, not for two. He simply stared at the folder like it was a ticking device. And then she pulled it open, slow, precise, surgical. And Trump's face lost all its color. Jasmine Crockett's fingers hovered over the folder for just a moment. Then she opened it. No theatrics, no drama in her voice. Just the unflinching stillness of someone who had waited for this moment with the patience of a surgeon and the certainty of a soldier. "This," she said, lifting a single page between her thumb and forefinger, "is the court-ordered DNA test from 2011. It wasn't leaked. It was subpoenaed." The room didn't make a sound, not a whisper, not a breath. Trump didn't move. Not yet. Crockett continued. The petitioner was identified in Florida's 11th Judicial Circuit under Case File 11 FL 4092. The respondent, Donald J. Trump. She placed the document flat, careful not to wrinkle it. The suit was filed by a woman who requested anonymity under state protection guidelines. She alleged that Mr. Trump was the biological father of her son, born July 2004. The court ordered a test. Trump shifted in his seat. "The results," she said, tapping the next page, "were a 99.97% match." The crowd gasped. One woman in the third row covered her mouth. Another man instinctively stood, then sat again, unsure if he'd just witnessed political theater or historic disclosure. Jasmine was already ahead of them. In 2012, just weeks before a major licensing deal was signed with a Dubai-based hotel group, this case was abruptly settled. Sealed, buried, payments distributed through a third-party shell company registered in Delaware. Trump's mouth twitched, but he didn't speak. The boy's name was listed briefly on a Trump Organization trust document, then removed within the same quarter. She paused, lifted her eyes from the paper, and met Trump's glare. "I'm not here to judge your personal life, but I am here to ask why a man who built a movement by demanding the birth records of a sitting black president has spent over a decade burying his own." Silence. "You demanded Obama's papers," she said, each word striking like a bell in a cathedral. "I'm just asking you to answer for yours." Trump leaned forward, face red, eyes darting to the moderator, to the audience, to the crew. His voice came out lower, strained. "This is fake. A setup. There's no way." "Would you like to deny it under oath?" Crockett asked calmly. He froze. "Because this document," she held up the notarized seal, "is still part of a public file in Miami-Dade. The only reason no one's seen it is because no one thought to look beneath the amended docket number." The moderator finally broke his paralysis. "Congresswoman Crockett, are you saying—" "I'm not saying anything that these documents don't say themselves," she replied. "I'm just providing the receipts." Someone in the crowd applauded. A single clap, then another, and then it stopped, because no one wanted to miss a single frame. On Twitter, your DNA gate exploded. Clips of the moment, cut mid-sentence, were already flying through timelines. One account wrote, "This is the real birth certificate moment. But it's his." TikTok edits layered music under Crockett's quote. Instagram reels had captions like, "Truth hits different when it's yours." And back in the room, Trump was unraveling. He stood abruptly. "This is harassment. This is a witch hunt. This is what they do. This is what they always do." But even as he shouted, even as the veins in his neck pulsed, his hands never once reached for the documents. He didn't touch them. Didn't deny them with specifics. Didn't even try to read them aloud. Crockett stayed seated. "I understand it's uncomfortable," she said, voice soft now. "Truth usually is, for people who've hidden behind money and cameras." Trump pointed toward the camera platform. "I want the feed cut. Do you hear me? Cut the cameras." The producers didn't move. The red light stayed on. In homes across America, millions of viewers watched their screens in stunned silence. Some hit rewind before the clip was even over. Others stared, phones in hand, trying to decide whether to scream or cry or cheer. On Reddit, someone wrote, "This was the political version of a courtroom takedown. She didn't just beat him, she exposed him." Another commented, "My mom hasn't voted in 30 years. She just stood up and said, 'She's the one.'" Trump stormed toward the moderator. "I'm not doing this. This is a setup. Where's The FEC? Where's my attorney? He turned again, barking louder. I said cut the cameras. Still, the feed rolled. Still, the world watched. Jasmine Crockett gathered her papers. Didn't raise her voice. Didn't gloat. Just looked out across the stage, as if watching a man fall into a hole he'd spent his life digging. And that's when Trump turned to the booth and shouted, "Cut the cameras. 12 hours." That's all it took for the political landscape to shift under everyone's feet. By dawn, DNA-gate had swallowed the internet. The clip, 47 seconds of rising tension, a calm voice, and a trembling reaction, was everywhere. TikTok remixes added a pulse-pounding beat beneath Jasmine Crockett's words. Edits flashed. 99.97% match. He didn't deny it. You demanded Obama's papers. A viral audio emerged by nightfall. A track titled 47 Seconds, sampling Crockett's final line, became the backdrop to thousands of videos. Teens dancing, parents nodding solemnly, activists posting face-to-camera monologues with captions like, "This is what courage looks like." Instagram reels looped the moment she opened the folder, zoomed in on Trump's paling face, and cut to static with a dramatic bass drop. On Twitter, now pulsing like a digital courtroom, the quotes flew fast. She did what the media never dared. That wasn't a debate. That was a dismantling. Trump looked at the truth and flinched. Within hours, Crockett trended in 14 countries. Not just in English. Translations appeared in Portuguese, Tagalog, Swahili, Arab language. News outlets subtitled The Confrontation. BBC aired the clip without commentary, just raw footage. CNN ran emergency coverage. Fox scrambled for a narrative. Some anchors questioned the authenticity of the documents. Others called it a strategic assassination. Legal analysts were brought on to discuss sealed records and subpoena laws. Was the test real? Could it be verified? Why hadn't anyone else uncovered it? The answer lingered like smoke in the air. Because no one had dared look that close. Comedians pounced. Late-night hosts reenacted the scene with slow motion and mock sobs. One show played Crockett's takedown over a gospel choir. Another ran a skit. A Trump impersonator trying to staple the folder shut while Crockett calmly narrated DNA science. Even rivals chimed in. One moderate senator tweeted, "We asked for accountability. She delivered it. With receipts." A former presidential candidate posted, "That was the most elegant takedown I've seen in my lifetime. Full stop." But Crockett? She said nothing. No press tour, no victory lap, no clever tweets. She let the silence speak. And in that silence, the internet filled the void with awe, fury, memes, hope. One viral tweet read, "It wasn't what she said. It was how she said it. Calm, cold, controlled. She didn't scream. She didn't grandstand. She exposed." Another pinned to the top of a trending thread. If this were a courtroom, she'd be the closer. The one they call in when the jury's still undecided. A grassroots campaign began within hours. Crockett 2028. On college campuses, students rewatched the footage between classes. At Sunday dinners, grandparents pulled out tablets and said, "Watch this part right here." And through it all, Trump remained off camera. His team issued a vague press release. Congresswoman Crockett's allegations are defamatory and politically motivated. But the document didn't deny the DNA test, didn't disprove the child, didn't mention the 2011 court case. Commentators picked it apart within minutes. If it wasn't true, why not say so? If the documents are fake, why not sue? Why did he ask to cut the cameras if there was nothing to hide? The pressure mounted. Meanwhile, Crockett's team held the line. No statements, no appearances. Her official page simply updated with one post, a still frame from the live stream, her hand on the folder, eyes fixed on Trump. Caption: Silence is clarity when the truth speaks loud enough. It was retweeted over 1 million times. And just when the buzz seemed to peak, just when the country caught its breath, just when networks began booking panels for What This Means for 2024, Crockett posted again. But Crockett wasn't done. Yet, her post the next morning changed everything again. The post was only 2 minutes long. No fancy graphics, no music. Just Jasmine Crockett sitting at a simple desk, the Capitol dome blurred behind her through a rain-flecked window. She looked into the camera. Not through it, not past it, but into it, and spoke with the same unshakable calm that had redefined a political moment just 24 hours earlier. This wasn't about vengeance, she began. It was about truth. No hashtags, no smugness, just clarity. We live in a time where spectacle replaces sincerity, where louder voices drown out honest ones, where those in power believe the rules apply to everyone but themselves, and we let it slide, over and over again, because we're told that's just how the game is played. She paused. Let the silence breathe. But I didn't grow up in a game. I grew up in a world where truth could save your life, or cost it, where your name, your skin, your story could be used against you, where lies weren't just offensive, they were dangerous. Her voice didn't rise. It deepened. So no, this wasn't about scoring points. This wasn't about a headline or a trending clip. This was about reminding the country that truth still matters, that we cannot demand integrity from others while hiding our own contradictions. That transparency isn't a weapon. It's a responsibility. She placed her hands on the desk. Identity shouldn't be something we weaponize. It should be something we protect, celebrate, honor. Whether you're a child born in a housing project in South Dallas or a president's son in the spotlight, you deserve the truth. Because dignity doesn't come from spin. A breath. Dignity comes from honesty, from standing in it even when it's uncomfortable, especially when it's uncomfortable. Then she leaned in, ever so slightly. Dignity isn't a brand, she said. It's a choice, especially when the cameras are rolling. The words hung there, suspended in digital time. Then she smiled. Not a smirk, not a grin. A small, honest smile, born of resolution. America deserves leaders who aren't afraid of the truth. Not when it's convenient, but always. And if I have to be the one to remind folks of that, I'll keep showing up. The video ended without music, just a fade to black, and within seconds the internet surged again. Not in outrage, not in chaos. In reflection, comments poured in. She just rewrote what leadership looks like. That wasn't a clapback, that was a sermon. More truth, in 2 minutes than I've heard in years. On cable news, even critics were quiet. One anchor whispered almost reverently, "This wasn't politics, this was principle." And across the country, something began to shift. Students used her words in graduation speeches. Churches quoted her on Sunday. Activists held up signs. Dignity is a choice. She hadn't just exposed a moment. She reframed the national conversation. It wasn't about who won the debate. It was about who showed up with truth and left with their dignity intact. And that truth? It didn't need to shout. It just needed to exist long enough to outlive the spin. And Jasmine Crockett had made sure of that. The clip rewinds. One last time. Jasmine Crockett sits steady behind the desk. The folder is open. Trump is frozen, breath caught mid-panic. And then comes the line that cracked the illusion wide open. "Your move, Mr. Transparency. Freeze frame." That moment, the silence after the truth lands, said more than any soundbite ever could, because this wasn't just a debate. It was a reckoning. This is what happens when preparation meets power, when lived experience speaks louder than legacy. when truth walks into the room and ego has nowhere left to run. For years, we've watched arrogance get rewarded, watched bluster dominate headlines, watched spectacle win airtime. But not this time. This time, the truth wasn't the loudest voice. It was the most permanent. And for 47 seconds, the whole world stopped pretending otherwise. So if you're still watching, don't just scroll past this moment. Don't just cheer from the sidelines. Witness it. Remember it. Share it. Because moments like this don't come from luck. They come from people who refuse to look away. If you believe in truth over ego, subscribe. If you believe dignity is the new power, share this. And if you believe 47 seconds can change everything, let's make sure the world remembers what came after. Not just what was exposed, but who stood tall when it happened.